Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Bible Study Minute. Today we're taking a look at 1 Corinthians chapters 9 and 10. And it starts with Paul talking about his apostleship. And he talks about how, as an apostle, he has the right to ask them for financial relief for the work that he's doing. But one of the things that he says is the example that he's setting is he's setting aside those rights that he has as an apostle so that he does not put any kind of stumbling block in front of these people to keep them from believing the gospel, and how he becomes as a Jew to those who are Jews, someone under the law, as to those who are dealing with the law, to Gentiles, relates to them as such, and so on, to do whatever he can to relate to them so that he can share the gospel with them. And then he goes on in chapter 10 to talk about Israel and their history, particularly their history in the wilderness, and how they are living as an example of what not to do, how so many of them, even though they were chosen by God and witnessed so many things of God's great power, how they were destroyed in the wilderness because of their sin and how they turned away from him. And then he just talks about really how we need to use our Christian liberties as a means for doing good and looking out for the good of others. And then, as a kind of bookend for both chapter 9 and chapter 10, he first gives an example of like physical fitness and running after a race, and uses that as a metaphor for talking about how we need to live our spiritual lives so that we are living in such a way that we don't disqualify ourselves, because the work that we're doing has an imperishable reward that we're going after. So the way that we live here matters. And then finally in chapter 10, he ends it by talking about how everything that we need to do it to the glory of God, whether we eat or drink, and everything that we do needs to be done for God's glory. So if we take those two things, it really causes us to reflect and think about how we live. And if we look at the example of Israel in the wilderness, are we living that kind of way to where we are seeing God's magnificent works and turning away from him, or are we using that as an example for how not to live and instead imitating Paul as he's following Christ and really living in such a way to where we are indeed glorifying God, seeking the good of others, and worshiping God with our lives. So that's the thought that I want to leave you with today as you take a look at this passage, and I hope it blesses you as it blessed me. Until next time, grace and peace.